What is Christ consciousness to you, though? This is an interesting question. I'm glad that you brought this up because this is something that, it's not, it's more speculative because we're not really sure. It's something that we're just kind of exploring. But what does it mean to you?
Okay. Well, I've had my own personal experience. In 2021, I done a guided breathwork journey, which took place for about an hour. And through that experience, I connected to something within. I believe that I found the secret of what lies within, which makes sense, which pieces everything together, where I found that God is within all of us and that we are all creation and we are all God within. And I just got this, I connected to something. I don't know what it was. And what it told me and what it made me feel was that it's all within us, that being love, that being creation, that being God. And I just tie that together of that experience that I've had to sort of say, well, hey, if I'm trying to make sense of everything that's happening externally, and I had that experience, and people are talking about awakening, people are talking about Christ consciousness, or ascension and Schumann resonance and all of these sorts of stuff, I sort of piece it together and go, oh, well, to me, that's what Christ consciousness is, because that's what I've felt, seen, and witnessed, right? And within inside of me, I believe it because I feel it. So
Okay. No, I respect that. I appreciate you clarifying because some people that I talk to have this idea of almost what I think of as kind of like hive mind, like kind of sharing the same consciousness. And then some people, and you may have this view, and this is where I may differ with some people. Some people look at this as like, like what you said, we are all part of creation, and we are all part of God. Some people think of this as God experiencing itself as itself. And I don't think that me and you and all things collectively make up God. I think there's still another piece of the equation that has to be put there with everything else to fully make up God.
No, well, actually, I'm going to actually ask you, considering, because you said about the facial recognition. In 2019, I went for a run around my local neighborhood, and I remember seeing like a big 100-foot 5G tower, and I thought nothing of it. Right? But there was something ringing, like in me, like knowing, like something's wrong with this, right? So I seen the 5G tower, and then obviously 12 months later, 2020 hit. Right. And it then all just started to piece together. Right.
I mean, that's why I was telling you, like, before we started recording, I mean, you watch a couple of appearances of mine on Around the Blockchain, and I've had a similar kind of get up going on. I joke about it kind of being like Mad Max. We're about to enter into the apocalypse. It's the end of the world as we know it, considering, we're going to see the collapse of the banking system and fiat money and the introduction of central bank digital currencies. And what I was telling you was there's more to it, because I'm not a gimmicky kind of individual. Having a YouTube channel and being on social media, I have a brand, but it's not where I'm trying to do all the suggested things that marketers and things would say, this is what you should do with your brand. And I'm just not really, I don't want to be very gimmicky. And I didn't want this to come off as gimmicky necessarily. And I was telling you before we started recording, you being in Australia and me understanding the political system and what's been happening to your beautiful land over the past few years, I want to be careful too about how I put this information out. I love the land, the land from down under Oz. It's a beautiful place. But what's happened within the legislative and governmental structure has been detrimental. And I feel as if a lot of the influence of what's been occurring in China has been happening in Australia. And this is how I would be in public, but I probably would do something I was telling you to obscure my head, the top of my head a little bit better as well. henceforth, I mean, I have a scarf. I got the old school, like cowboy, like when you think about somebody robbing a bank, and I got the big old, these are like dirt bike goggles.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, to me, it was just like a way of, I mean, this is the future that's coming, man. When people may think I'm being silly or overreactive, but living in Australia, you probably would relate. Someone who doesn't live in Australia might be like, well, what's going on here? But eventually this reality will catch up to each and every person watching this.
Do you think it's just a big business deal that they're trying to introduce? Or like I've been very aware of what's been going on, and they got these white dome cameras, and they're everywhere, and they tried to introduce it as like mobile phone detection cameras when you drive. And it was like all of this, this was like 2020. It's like, oh, mobile phone detection camera. And I was like, no. This is the surveillance. This is the beginning of the social credit, right? Like I was looking at the dome cameras, and they're coming up, they were coming on the traffic lights, they were coming in the shopping centers. And, you could just see it unravel and unfold. And then, as I was saying, what I witnessed in 2019 with those towers, then I'm like, I finally get it, right? It was almost like everything that happened in 2020, the sickness that come around, it was almost like the decoy was to roll out the tech, and what you're saying about what's happening with Australia, it seems to be happening with the other Commonwealth nations, New Zealand, Canada, England. Are we just witnessing the detachment from the royal family, and then the new one is this communist backed by, well, it's basically communism, but it's that one world government, the new world order, one world government. Is that how?
It's all one big club, the way I look at it. I think they're kind of all in this together. I mean, the ultimate deal is for ultimate power and ultimate control. I mean, with the central bank digital currency, today is April 7th, 2023. Not sure when you're putting it out, but there was just news coming out from a couple different nations talking about their CBDC, their central bank digital currency, is not going to be programmable. That's what they're telling people.
Yeah.
And it's like, once you give an inch, the old saying is they'll take a foot, but in this instance, they'll take a mile. They'll take as much as they can potentially take. They're going to act like these things are in people's best interest. And if you look at the adoption of just that technology, the central bank digital currencies, where it exists, it's very low. So when we see a crisis situations that ushers people into these said surveillance devices, I mean, it's all one big goal. Whether or not there's good guys or bad guys in these governments, if you look at what's happening from non-governmental agencies like your World Economic Forum and such, you can see what the agenda is. I mean, considering the young global leaders, they're supposed to be individuals who are helping to influence the World Economic Forum's agenda in different legislative bodies in whatever nation they may be representing. And the goal is to have that in all the different nations so that they can implement these goals on a global scale. So it doesn't really matter, I don't feel like, because I think enough with history that money controls everything. And who controls the money? The banks. So the banks control everything. Everybody is, the banks have their pocket in everybody and everything. And a lot of these politicians are all just puppets controlled by those individuals.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that those individuals can start to expose themselves, because I'm a little bit over the guessing game of like who are the master puppeteers in this.
It's not the ones you hear about or see. That's for damn sure. And that's it's, this whole thing has been like a generational, multi-generational long chess game of very patient individuals that systematically have worked together to do a multitude of different things all around the world and different governments and nations to, in a sense, almost get us to almost where we are today. We're not quite there yet, because if we were, then they would already have their central bank digital currency and digital ID, and we would already be in digital prison. We wouldn't even be allowed to have this conversation, my friend.
Yeah. It's very interesting, because you'd think it makes sense, and you go, yeah, this system is a good system. let's have this system for criminals, right? Let's have it for people that drug dealers, kidnappers and stuff like this. Let's have this whole surveillance system and let's monitor where, you know, corrupted money goes. Like, let's start there rather than it just putting it out onto the people first. It's like, like when you look at it that way, you go, oh, like we're the ones that you know, the bad guys, it appears, and you just see through the whole thing. It's just like, you know, you'd have a test pilot to say, oh, let's just start it on criminals, and then next minute it's like, no, it's like we are the criminals and we're testing it on you guys first. But
yeah, well, in that instance, like if you look at what's happened in China, that could be a test for what they could implement around the world. When we see hyperinflation and how it impacts a nation, we can look at Zimbabwe and Venezuela. If we want to look at bail-ins versus the bailout situation, we can look at Cyprus, Greece, and we can look what happened in that scenario. So I feel as if a lot of these other things are tests as well on a larger scale, because again, it does look as if most nations, not with the people's complete knowledge and otherwise I don't think they'd be giving consent. I think they're all trying to go towards this like surveillance network for the safety of everybody's welfare. It's like, you know, what do you have to hide? Why should you have privacy? And you know, people are just going to be giving up this false sense of security for they're going to lose their liberties. There's a quote, and I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something to the effect of giving up your liberties on a even a temporary basis. And I think it's a Benjamin Franklin quote, but just deserve neither. You know, if you're gonna, you need to stand up for your things. And that's also what we experienced in the year of 2020 and throughout that pandemic, was how much people would consent to what their government was telling them.
Between now and the next 7 years is going to be very interesting. But if we didn't, you know, witness everything that happened post 2020, so that's a mild wake up call. And it's like the options are either merge with it or, you know, gain your sovereignty and sort of get a little bit off grid and escape it. And
speaking of Australia, though, Max Egan, are you familiar with him?
Yeah. Basically, some stuff was happening at his house and some weird stuff, and he had to leave. Yeah, without going into full detail, but we both get it.
Yeah, and there's also a channel called Justinian Deception. That's an Australian-based channel, and one of the two members was put in incarceration without being charged, and ultimately just kind of coerced after sitting in prison for so much time, got charged and signed some agreements and NDAs, and is not putting out content anymore. So it's you know, it's really scary. And you don't, right now, I know that those things could be coming here to the United States, but knowing that they're happening there, I mean, again, that's why I'm trying to be careful about what I'm saying, but at the same time, I want to make sure I'm saying what I'm saying too.
Yeah, no, I completely get it. You know, I've been tapping sort of into that, and it does worry me because some of the things that I say, you know, like I had some strange things happen to me. I had police helicopters flying over my house multiple times, and I was posting some wild stuff. But
maybe your handlers, I'm sure, I'm just curious. I'm sorry to interrupt me. It's something I do. Sorry, and I'll try to be better about it. But maybe your handlers are probably like, oh my God, why are these two guys talking?
Yeah. Well, I
talk to my handlers all the time because, you know, I have surveillance devices around me. I got smartphones, smart TV, multiple computers. So it's like, might as well talk to them.
Yeah. Yeah. My handlers haven't turned my phone red, so I can't breathe anymore. Yeah. You know, it's so funny. Like almost probably 5 years ago, I used to think to myself, I'm like, society's merging in a way where one day it's going to cost money to breathe air, you know, and like I thought that's what they're, you know, like what's that movie with Justin Timberlake, In Time? You know how they got like that In Time, and I used to make jokes.
I think it was called Time. I can't remember, but I know what you're talking about. It was
like
you had to buy your time.
Yeah. And I always thought to myself, I'm like, you know what, society one day is going to have a section where there's air and you're going to have to pay to, you know, to actually breathe. And it seems like it's coming very, very quickly, and it might be around the corner.
with that Microsoft patent 060606
Yeah.
something,
Mhm.
that one about the
Variant.
body, activity and
Mhm.
mining and things like that. Maybe it might be a situation like I don't know if you've seen or have the show available on Netflix in Australia called Black Mirror.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very much Black Mirror like, and it could be a situation where we wake up in the morning, if you're one of those obedient individuals, but you may have to wake up and get on your little hamster wheel and go do your jogging just to earn your
Yeah.
air and earn your time for the day.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
get on the wheel, little hamster, and run, get me some energy.
Didn't they stop making those shows because it was like, because they got up to like, I don't know, season 5 and they stopped after a specific episode. And I heard a rumor like 2020 or 2021, it was like, it was matching too close to reality where they stopped making them and the show stopped. So
I don't
maybe
know
it was
why it
like
stopped, but I also think it started to, the quality of the show started to degrade after a couple
declining.
seasons.
Yeah.
I mean, I really haven't really truly wouldn't say there's much beyond the first 2 seasons that are really have as much impact as like those first 2 seasons. So I don't know if it's just coincidental or if it was too close. Who knows? I mean, but it's easy to as somebody who wears a tinfoil hat to assume that they got too close to reality, so they shut them down. But really, it could just be like they just ran out of ideas and just aren't really good at continuing their series. So I
Yeah,
try to look at
maybe.
things from as many perspectives as I can.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it was a very interesting show. You said something, and that's what I was going to say. Like, how do you think we got here? Like, how do you think we got here where it was like we just woke up in this other world? Like, do you ever look at stuff with CERN, or do you ever like, are you in tune with prophecy and things like that? Like, do you navigate things based off, maybe scripture or revelation, stuff like that?
Are we
Or
talking about like the Bible, Christianity, kind of like prophecy, or what are we talking about? Let's define that.
so, okay, when I use that word, I think there's specific people out there that will quote text coming out of Revelation, right?
Okay.
Or, the beast and stuff like that. I'm not actually referring to a religion based, say, like
But you're
Christianity.
talking about the Bible. It just gives me perspective, and I get that. So I just needed a little bit of clarity. I prophecy, I definitely follow the teachings of Christ, and I really adhere to the Bible as much as possible. I don't necessarily identify as a Christian because most people who call themselves Christians aren't very Christ-like, and I consider myself a practicing Christian because I'm practicing to be Christ-like as much as possible, which I think is what we should strive for if that is what the teachings that you value and that you want to commit yourself to. So with that being said, a lot of the things in the Bible I question a lot because I know how the New Testament was put together. I've looked into the history of Rome, the history of the Flavian dynasty, the councils of Nicaea, which is where the New Testament was put together, and there's a lot of potential books that could have been included in the canon that weren't, and it's a question of why. And so I'm not quite sure. So I keep myself open to all that. But when it comes to where we're at today, it definitely seems like a lot of that stuff could very much line up as far as the book of Revelation. But how we got here was a combination of very systematic things that have happened. I can't say specifically for Australia, but I can say the commonality between all of it. We got here because we allowed it. Your father allowed it. Your grandfather allowed it. Everybody allowed it, or the ones that didn't got shut up and put out and killed, whatever the situation might have been, like people like Max Egan escaping Australia. So that may have been Max's fate had Max remained on that landmass. So I've been talking about this a lot, and it's kind of a hard pill to swallow, but we are both equally the problem and a solution. And in a democracy, everything happens because of the consent of the governed. Whether that consent is manufactured consent or not, because you're just ignorant of how things work, it is what it is. But it's all because of the consent of the governed. What's happening in Australia, my friend? it's because the Australians are allowing it. What's happening in France, that's not necessarily because the French are actually standing up. They're tearing up, you know, and they're burning down places. So I'm not talking negatively. I don't want to say like it's your fault necessarily, but it is your fault. But it's not your fault. It's everybody's fault together. We've all collectively have allowed this happen on each and every individual landmass, unless you're in a country where you have a dictator, then you didn't have a choice. But so far, it doesn't appear as if you guys technically have a dictator or a queen, a king, a monarch in Australia. Maybe it's like that behind the scenes, but publicly, there doesn't appear to be that taking place like in other nations. So it's all our faults, man. It's how we got here. We allowed it to happen. A lot of people, unfortunately, man, most people are greedy and have a price.
Yeah, seems like it's
they sell out, man. I'm not going to say everybody, but the ones that don't, you don't hear about them anymore. They're just these people that we try to draw inspiration from. People that have stood up against the system are no longer with us.
Yeah, if you can just take the whole thing back. Like I look at it and open everything up and go as far back as, you know, when Bill Clinton was in power, and sort of tie in the Epstein, and you think, okay, Epstein ties into how we got here today, because there are a lot of compromised leaders. You know, there are a lot of leaders that look like that, you know, they've just surrendered and let everything go. And, oh, fuck, okay, well, I have to do that. I have to do that. Like when 2020 come, our current leader at the time, Scott Morrison, he just put his hands up and sat back. And he said, you know what, I'm not going to mandate this. I'm not going to lock the country down. It's up to the states. So it was like they broke Australia up into mini nations. And when you talk about dictators, there was, I think every state had their own dictator. Melbourne, which was Dan Andrews, you may have heard of him.
But aren't all those elected officials technically?
They're premiers of the state.
But they were elected, right? They weren't chosen by the government, right? I mean, the people technically voted for them and put them in that place.
Well, one of the guys, Dan Andrews, he's served term over 4 years, 3 times. So he's been in the premier since like 2012, 2014, right? So as your normal election, then obviously, yes, they've been elected, but I don't think these are, I think we, you know, after what we witnessed in 2020, stolen elections, or they're put in power. You know what I mean? So
no, I get it. I just want to make sure that I was clarifying and I understood that these were actually elected, because there are unelected officials in government, but they don't necessarily hold a position of like governor or something, or a senator or a parliamentary member.
Well, we did see
that's the reason I asked that.
Yeah, we did see that there was a few people that just popped up that was actually taking control of the narrative and saying what we needed to do. You know, there was one called Kerry Chan, which was a health minister, and we're like, no one voted this person in. And then, you know, there was a couple of others. But yeah, I think that when they broke down Australia into these mini states, they call them mini nations, that you did see the rise of some form of dictatorship out of these states, which really woke people up. And, you know, when you're talking about, you know, faith and stuff, you know, you hear a lot of people talk about the Great Awakening, and it's interesting you're saying about, feel that we're moving into this way of Christ consciousness in a way, like we're all sort of, you know, to get out of this shitstorm will be Christ consciousness, will be unity, and that being the awakening, right? So I think that that's where it's going, moving forward, which is sort of, it gives you hope that if we all just, you know.
What is Christ consciousness to you, though? This is an interesting question. I'm glad that you brought this up, because this is something that, you know, it's more speculative, because we're not really sure. It's something that we're just kind of exploring. But what does it mean to you?
Okay. Well, I've had my own personal experience. In 2021, I done a guided breathwork journey, which took place for about an hour. And through that experience, I connected to something within. I believe that I found the secret of what lies within, which makes sense, which pieces everything together, where I found that God is within all of us, and that we are all creation and we are all God within. And I just got this, I connected to something. I don't know what it was. And what it told me and what it made me feel was that it's all within us, you know, that being love, that being creation, that being God. And I just tie that together of that experience that I've had to sort of say, well, hey, if I'm trying to make sense of everything that's happening externally, and I had that experience, and people are talking about awakening, people are talking about Christ consciousness, or ascension and Schumann resonance and all of these sorts of stuff, I sort of piece it together and go, oh, well, to me, that's what Christ consciousness is, because that's what I've felt, seen, and witnessed, right? And within inside of me, I believe it because I feel it, you know? So
Okay. No, I respect that. I appreciate you clarifying, because some people that I talk to have this idea of almost what I think of as kind of like hive mind, like kind of sharing the same consciousness. And then some people, and you may have this view, and this is where I may differ with some people. Some people look at this as like, we, like what you said, we are all part of creation, and we are all part of God. And some people think of this as God experiencing itself as itself. And I don't think that me and you and all things collectively make up God. I think there's still another piece of the equation that has to be put there with everything else to fully make up God. And I think that's what separates us individually from God entirely. Because if God is made up of everything, it's almost like if you look at it as a puzzle, and it's 100-piece puzzle, and everything in this universe makes up 99 pieces. It's almost God, but it's not God without that one more piece. And that one piece by itself singularly is source. That's my viewpoint.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. With my experience as well, and this really blew my mind. Like Kundalini and your chakras and stuff like that, and your pineal gland and stuff. I felt like I escaped the frontal lobe in this breathwork journey, right? But I was back here, and I was further back from my frontal lobe, but I was looking up, and looking up was light, and looking up was Kundalini, right? I say Kundalini, but I sort of like your crown chakra, which was the light. But up at the light was that knowing that we are the secret, and that is where love is, and creation, and along those lines. But then further down was like darkness and fears and all of these things. And I had this moment, and I just was like, oh, wow. Like, looking at it reminded me of the chambers in the Great Pyramid. And if you look at the way that the Great Pyramid chambers are, how it's sort of like it goes up and then that way and then straight up, I was like, far out. I was like, this is the best way to explain it, that it was like being in the chamber, but within myself, and it really,
Right.
it blew my mind. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And it's really beautiful, man. I mean, and again, it's not, I don't think it's like anything. And I would never argue like with somebody about their answer. I can only share what I feel like it is, because again, it's like just like with the word God. I don't even really necessarily like the word God. I try to use more like source, or just creator, creation of everything. It's the point of where we came from. And I don't even try to define that. Sometimes I'll refer to it in a masculine form as a he, but I don't mean to even do that. And I think by even calling it he limits what it is. So I don't try to define things I don't necessarily fully know 100%. I try as much as I can with this. So I do this as much as possible with source.
Yeah.
If I don't define it, I haven't limited what it can or can't be. But when you start trying to define and act like you know what God is, you're full of shit.
Yeah.
It's the best way to put it. All of us are full of shit. Nobody knows really what it is.
Yeah.
unless you've experienced something. And I think that if you've experienced that something, you would have probably moved on in some way, like transcended, just became part of, like, I don't know if you've watched Powder, the movie Powder.
No, I haven't. No. Is it old or new?
It's an old movie, but it's a really interesting movie. But the guy ends up just turning into pure energy and just being a part of everything.
That's almost like
Or even the end of Space Odyssey 2001, when Dave had, I guess, gained all the knowledge of existence. And it was like, I don't know if you've seen that movie either. That's really slow movie, but the ending of it is really deep about what this guy experiences.
No, it reminds me of there's a female actor, blonde hair, can't think of her name. It's recent. Morgan Freeman's in it as well, but she smuggles that blue liquid and the bag breaks up and she gets that god.
Yeah, no, it's on a
Sounds very similar, but
it's not Charlie Sharon or whatever her name is. Charlie Sharon. I can't remember her name, but it's not her. So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I have no clue. But anyway,
somebody
who's watching this maybe can comment in the video description. This can give some participation and let us know what movie we're talking about that we have no clue the title of.
If she's in some of like the Marvel shows as well, I can't think of a name. Anyway, let's keep moving.
I was thinking the girl maybe played Harley Quinn, but I wasn't sure if that's the one you were meaning. She was in a couple different movies with Will Smith, I believe. But yeah, I don't know. I'm confusing it. So again, if people are watching this, you remember a movie with Morgan Freeman and a blonde actress and some blue stuff.
I want to Google a name, but let's. You know what? We're this far deep now, but I didn't even give you the chance to give yourself an introduction, and I think I've got a little list of things here, and we sort of took a little bit of a diversion, but it was actually good that we actually spoke about some of these things. But if you don't mind, I'll fire away with some of the things because, again, as I was mentioning earlier, like I stumbled upon your channel in, I think 2021, but I remember what really caught my attention with you. I think you were on Around the Blockchain and you mentioned something about tally sticks, right? And then as soon as you said that and you told this story about tally sticks, I'm like, wow. I'm like, I never would have thought that. And I never really knew. And so that's when I sort of messaged you and I was like, I want to know more, like, tell me more, because if you look at, like, you know the story because you've said it before, but if you look at stuff that happened in the late 1920s with the buyback thing with gold, and then you look at everything that's happening now with crypto and all these people talking about XRP and what's sort of happening, like you just see all of it being very, very, very similar on how we transition into this next thing. So I'd like to, hear you talk a little bit about the tally sticks and we'll move on from there.
I haven't really covered the tally sticks in a long time. I mean, it's just really an idea of like having these sticks that they were like putting these tallies on, and it was a way of having a currency. Anything that the thing about value is that in reality, and I had this conversation with somebody about gold last night. In reality, nothing really has like a monetary value. We assign it when we think about something having value, we think of it having a monetary value. But anything can have value. It just depends on what people agree have value. And there was a time period where we used to use these puka shells.
Oh, wow.
These used to be a form of currency. Rocks have been forms of currency. I was looking for something here on the internet that I could use because I think that I want to say Rothschilds ended up purchasing some.
It was like the Bank of England or something for 30,000 tally sticks.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about that. So it was like they bought the bank with imaginary money to put together the system of imaginary money because we're not on any sort of gold standard. What tally sticks tell us about how money works? So.
But if you look at like we've always had something physical as a way of trade, and then now all of a sudden after hundreds and thousands of years, well, not hundreds of thousands, but hundreds of years and thousands of years, that now all of a sudden we might be going central bank digital currency, right?
So tallies were a way of recording debts, because I had notes when I did that show, man. So just don't think everything I talk about I have like right here up my
You're a
head. I'm
genius.
48 years old. I'm a full-time cannabis user. But I remember a lot. I just don't remember everything, but I know how to pinpoint where it's at. So tallies were a way of recording debts with a system that was simple and effective. The sticks would contain a record of debt, for example, E9 4S 4D from Falk Bassett for a farm of whatever. And that would be like he owed his debt to King Henry II. Now comes the elegant part. These sticks would be split in half down its length from one end to the other. The debtor would retain half, which is called the foil, and the creditor retain the other half, which is called the stock. Even today, British bankers use the word stocks to refer to debts of the British government. Because willow has a natural and distinctive grain, the two halves would match only each other. So they're very specific to each other. So, of course, the Treasury could simply have kept a record of these transactions in a ledger, but the tally stick system enabled something radical to occur. It had to, if you had a tally stock showing that Bishop Bassett owed you £5, then unless you worried that he wasn't good for the money, the tally stock itself was as close to £5 in its own right. So it was like almost like a way for us to like kind of have like a stick with our credit score almost, which I guess we could call that a credit card. So yeah, I mean, a lot of things had changed, but yeah, when you start studying the history, there was some crazy stuff that had went down with the Rothschilds family and the Bank of England and some tally sticks. And, you know, we just don't have a lot of clue about what money is. And then people got pissed off about these systems, and we went back to something like having real coinage. And then we would start storing gold with, I don't know what you would refer to these individuals because they weren't necessarily called banks, but they goldsmiths, whatever the situation might be, but they would have safes, and you could store your gold with these gold people, whatever they were called. Somebody can comment down below, and they would give you certificates in place of the golds, like kind of like a warehouse receipt saying this represents your gold. And instead of going around giving people gold to buy things, they could use these warehouse receipts that were literally just you can go turn this receipt in for gold. Because up until a certain point in history, and I'll use the United States, which is something I'm more familiar with than other ones, you could go to a bank up before 1933 and take your paper money, really current, well, it was money then, and you could exchange it for gold or silver. This is not one of the original ones. This is one of the later ones that came out in the 50s, but this is a silver certificate. If you look at the top of the bill, it says silver certificate. So this is redeemable for $1 worth of silver.
Right.
When they removed that, we became fiat, and that officially took place for everybody 1971. You could thank the United States President, Richard Nixon, August 15th, 1971, took us off the gold standard. Since we're the reserve currency and all the other currencies are backed by gold via our dollar, and our dollar is no longer backed by gold, everything became fiat. 1971. So, but prior to that, you could take your warehouse receipt or whatever you want to call it and turn it in and get your, in this case, silver, and another case, maybe gold. So they just stopped making these things redeemable for real money. And then when they stopped backing it by gold and silver, what we call money became currency, because money, one of the most important properties of money is being a store of value, where you can store your wealth without having inflation and deflation come in and devalue the purchasing power of what you're trying to save, which is what we're currently experiencing now, that most of the people around the world are asking and complaining, why are my eggs cost so much? You know, and people just, you know, it's because the entire world printed up more than double the money supply that it had prior to 2020.
Yeah.
And it devalued all the money you put out there into existence because nothing backs it. It's all monopoly game money, and now we're just playing this game of make-believe, and now they want to shift it into a digital area that leads into this like surveillance state that could be connected up with central bank digital currencies, being connected with a digital ID, being connected with a social credit score, your carbon footprint, or whatever they want to refer to it as, your carbon credits, whatever.
So do you think we'll go back to gold maybe? And I mean, because again, they can't just now stop physical, currency. They can't. There has to be something, right? Maybe this is the new physical thing, because that's where the CBDC will be stored.
Let's say the central bank digital currencies are going to replace what we call our money.
Yeah.
Then yes, if that's the case, yes. So re-ask the question and let me answer this properly.
Do you think the phone will be backed by the central bank digital currency since we're removing anything physical? Well, since we're removing cash
in its current, not in the current form, because the fiat system that we have currently right now is crashing, and you can't just all of a sudden back it by gold and think you're going to prevent it from crashing. Now, the replacement system to this dying fiat money that we're experiencing, yes. I mean, could they, in theory, take their central bank digital currency and back it by gold? They could. But when you think about how it's going to be ushered in and implemented, why would they? Because unfortunately, man, here's the problem. Again, you asked, how do we get here? It's because we allowed it.
Yeah.
So there's too many people that would, if we lived in the book 1984, there's more people in that book, just like in our reality, that are going to trust their governments, or just too scared to fall out of line because of the consequences. How many people are going to not care about their social credit score?
Yeah.
When they can't eat.
Do you think of what a lot of people are talking about, that XRP is going to be the bridge currency, or that ties all of this together with BRICS and everything else like that? Do you think XRP is really what everyone's saying it's going to be?
I believe it's what is chosen by the system. But I think that most people that would consider themselves part of the XRP army are just really confused and don't really understand what they're really fully supporting. Because Ripple, from day one, the centralized company behind the XRP token, which RP, part of XRP, stands for Ripple, by the way, and they own more than 51% of the supply of their token. They were designed to be a banker coin. They were designed to help keep the banking system going. It was just trying to replace an antiquated system. So they're already in the kind of pockets and working with legacy finance, TradFi, whatever people want to call it. They're helping to usher in the central bank digital currencies. And there's even talk about trying to issue central bank digital currencies on the XRP ledger, the XRPL. So, I mean, it's possible nations can do that. I'm not saying the United States will, but it is possible, and it will be used. But the other thing that people got to also take in consideration is that, and tell me, just tell me one good thing about this, because I've had this argument with Ben Armstrong and he has his viewpoint of it, but Ripple itself is a partner of the World Economic Forum. Now, I want you to tell me how that makes you feel. And then the CEO of Ripple, Brad Garlinghouse, is also on the board of directors of the World Economic, with your good buddy and my good buddy, Klaus Schwab. How do you feel about both of those things?
Well, I mean,
and when I tell that to somebody who thinks that Bitcoin is going to not exist because of XRP, I just have to shatter people's dreams and hopes and be like, I'm just trying to bring you the truth, my friend.
I think it all depends on what we consume, right? And our consume always tends to be the reality. So those that are plugged into the XRP army, that's their reality. Those that are plugged into the Bitcoin maxi.
If people want to do this for money, if people are trying to increase their stack their sats, if they're trying to, like, it could, because you're going to get a higher return on something like Ripple than you would on right now with Bitcoin. If your idea is to take your profits from and everything that you made from XRP to increase your stack, buy more gold, buy more silver, buy more Bitcoin, whatever the situation might be, as long as it's not there to be a cheerleader for Ripple. Because I feel like a lot of the XRP army are cheerleaders for these people that clearly work with the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
And that makes me question these people who call themselves patriots.
Yeah.
But they support the World Economic Forum. And I'm like, well, do you understand what I just said to you right there? And some people just, it's cognitive dissonance. They don't even want to admit that they're supporting something like that. So I had to ask people, like, and that's usually how I start off, is like, why are you involved in XRP? You just trying to make more money? You just trying to get something, or, are you like banking on XRP? It's like, are you in the cult of the XRP? Because it's not, I mean, you're basically sucking the tit of Big Brother is it's the best way I can put it, and again, but if that's your choice, I've got to respect it. I just may not agree with it.
Yeah, it does seem like a bit of a trap, like let's remove XRP and let's remove Bitcoin out of all of this. And now let's say that now we're being introduced to the World Economic Forum, Great Reset, central bank digital currency. Everybody would be freaking out and panicking. But let's introduce something like Ripple to say, oh, by the way, you can make money off this. And then you're getting like a lot of people on board to accept it. Right. So, they're playing all different sides here. You know what I mean? They're playing the positive, they're playing the negative. But to answer your question, like, how do I feel when you see Brad Garlinghouse at World Economic Forum? It's the same with Ivanka Trump being there and also Trump himself. First you have to sort of understand, okay, well, what is it? Like, what are they going there for? Is this just a big business conference? Are they buying an idea? Are they incorporating it? Are they a part of something, bigger? And people get invited. But
they're paying, every single one of those individuals pays to be there. So there's something more to it. It's more like a really exclusive business meeting where you can meet really important people. Now, I agree that just because somebody may speak at Davos or may speak at a World Economic Forum event doesn't necessarily make them a bad guy per se. But being on the board of directors with Klaus Schwab is kind of taking it a little bit further than just, basic speaking at an event. He's part of the board. Like, who do you think makes the direction of the World Economic Forum? The board. You think Brad Garlinghouse is on the board fighting against the World Economic Forum? He wouldn't even be on the board if that were the case. You see what I'm saying? Like, if you're not already in the club, you wouldn't be at the event. And I'm a political atheist. I don't support any of these politicians. None of them. So I don't support Donald Trump. I don't support Biden. I don't support none of them. I will support somebody who's trying to actually do something for real. But until I'm proven that somebody's actually trying to benefit the people versus making the governments and central banks more and more powerful. No, I don't. No, he had every ability to do so. I'm not saying he's a bad guy, but if he wanted to like restore our republic in the United States, he had every opportunity to do so while he was president. Chose not to do it. And I don't remember offhand what it is, but there's been videos with a gentleman who I've talked with that has said what that legislation that Donald Trump could have enacted to restore the republic. So I put a video out not too long ago on Rice TVx, basically with an eagle on the cover, on the thumbnail. It said, "What if I told you?" And it's all about right wing, left wing, same bird. I don't know if you have right and left wing politics in Australia, but here with Democrat, Republican Party, they call it right and left wing.
Yeah.
And we have the American Eagle. So I just look at it. It's all the same. They're all part of the same bird.
Yeah, we do, but it's not like, actually, they've just introduced the red and blue colors, I think, like more in a way, like we had an election night for the premiers about 2-3 weeks ago, and it was like Friday night football. It was, I'm just like, fuck, what are they doing? It was like, it was crazy. It was like election night in America, you know, and I think that you're now cheerleading for a team, but it's not what you get, you know, and it's so bad.
Well,
you know,
South Park put it best. They put out episodes years ago talking about your choice was always, it didn't matter who was on, you know, who you were voting for. Your choice was always between a douche or a turd sandwich. And Americans who watch South Park or Australians who watch South Park will appreciate that. But that is, they've come up with some of the best analogies that I can come up with, and that's what you're getting with all these politicians, is a douche and a turd sandwich. You know, what do you want to vote for, the douche or the turd sandwich?
I know, it's crazy.
I just don't participate. That's why I say I'm a political atheist. Like I have not subscribed to the religion of any of these political institutions that deem themselves the Republic, like the Church of Republicans. Like, I'm not going to be a part of your cult, sir.
And man, I want to pull my hair out. I see everybody playing a part of it and talking about it, and I'm just like, can you not see that? Like when the leaders they serve 4-year term, and then they leave, you don't see them ever again, right? It's like then when they leave, the new guy comes in, does the exact same thing that they done, then they done, and it's just like this repeating. And it's like people go on, oh, this guy's going to fix it.
Let me remind you, all the people who really stood up, who were really a threat, what happened to them?
Well, they're either gone or they sold out.
So, and if you're not in that, if you're really a threat to the system and you're walking around, then I don't feel like you fit that description. It's more like controlled opposition, or just playing your role to make sure that the ultimate agenda gets done. And in the meantime, you got this dog and pony show going on. Look here, no, look over there, and all this other stuff. I mean, it's so much distraction on every different end for people to look at. I mean, there are people in the United States at one point were infatuated with that Johnny Depp trial because some lady shit on a bed. What did that have to do with anything important? But people were focusing on that and not looking at other things that were happening. And it's happening around us today. And that was happening in the time of Rome, when they had the Colosseums and everybody was like watching people getting eaten by lions, and all around them was nothing but despair. And they were just trying to get people to forget about what was happening around them by keeping them distracted. Quit being distracted, little sheep, is what I say to people. And I say to people, quit being the problem and start being the solution. Because as much as I said before, how did we get here is because we allowed it to happen. We're equally the problem and we're equally the solution. Just what are you going to feed?
Have you ever heard of Steve Irwin?
The crocodile hunter?
Yeah, Steve Irwin.
Hell yeah. Shout out, rest in peace. I hope he's a good man.
Hey,
he seemed like a genuinely good dude, but I don't really know about his family.
Do you think Australia would be where it is today if he didn't die all those years ago, 17 years ago?
I wouldn't have think that Steve Irwin would have had any kind of political impact on Australia at all.
I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay.
Right? So there's a race car driver called Peter Brock, and he pretty much like in NASCAR, basically, but there's a category of car racing clusters of V8 supercars. And it's like your Holdens or your Fords, and they're the V8s. Anyway, Peter Brock was just a champion in this car racing, but he went and done a thing called a Targa, which is a rally event through, scenic roads of Australia. Anyway, he ended up dying, right? So Peter Brock died in, I think it was 2005 or 2006. And Steve Irwin also died in 2005 or 2006. And with everything that's going on in the world, I sort of look back and I think, what would Australia be like today if the two biggest Australian icons, right, which put basically Australia on the map, what would Australia be like today if these people were still alive? Some of the things
hold on, I'm kind of offended as a non-Australian, because what about Crocodile Dundee?
Well, he actually ran off Paul
So you
Hogan.
consider him to be like he's
No,
an
he
Australian
ran
trader.
off. He ran off. Well, okay. So Jimmy Barnes, Paul Hogan, these are some big Aussie names. They all fled Australia, right? Paul Hogan did. He lives in America, like to get away from taxes and stuff. So these people ended up coming out of Australia.
Okay.
Right. So
where the two you mentioned stayed and just kept, being like kind of national heroes.
Well, Steve Irwin was all about conserving a lot of the land, buying back a lot of the land and protecting it from species and stuff. Now, all of this land now is, there's parts of mining or it's owned by the Chinese, parts of Darwin, the Chinese government have a 99-year lease on the port of Darwin, which is next door to Queensland, one of the states that Steve Irwin was fighting for. So there's a part of me that think these two big icons of Australia were actually eliminated intentionally so that this thing can actually play out.
That's interesting.
And it's like what you're saying before, like what happened to those people that stood up? They're gone. And to me, there's this big rabbit hole that actually opens. There's so much stuff that I've now starting to piece together and witness that's been going on with Australia, even with the fires as well. There's a lot of stuff that happened in 2019, 2020 with wildfires and how this all ties into to where we're all heading. But yeah, I just thought I'd ask that with Steve because, to me, it makes sense.
No, it does. It's not something I would have really thought about, but I mean, the way that you explained it, it definitely makes sense. I mean, I would, if you wanted to, I mean, you could just dig in more into finding out, how they both specifically died. I would also be curious as to know why, because as far as I was aware, I thought that Steve Irwin's family was like continuing on. I thought he had a son that was trying to be like him.
Yeah, so they had a wildlife park. So the family continued that wildlife park on, but the movement that he was, a part of with regaining the land and protecting certain parts, for animals.
They never continue with that.
Well, I don't know that part.
Right. I'm curious I would be, if you want to look into it, I'd be curious what the family is doing today to continue his work and make sure that they're keeping that alive, or if they're still pretending to do something similar, but they're not actually continuing to protect the wildlife itself.
Well, they're all a part of the TV industry now, right? We all know that everyone in the TV industry has handlers, and are allowed to, they're controlled what they can and can't say and what they should and should not be doing for their image. So they've been cleaned up, and been taken. So, they're definitely controlled. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I think they would have let go with a lot of Steve's path and direction and swept a lot of it under the rug. So, but 100%, man, I honestly believe that Australia would not be going through what it was going through if he was alive today. And, his death was a stingray accident, but even that, was it a robot?
It could. I mean, as far as I know, it could have been a mechanical. It could have been a drone. I mean, I'm hearing about genetic modification of plants now, like that could, have distortions when people eat them and have some ill effect. Almost similar to like what they were trying to, encourage people to do during the 2020 and 2021 time period that didn't want to go through some of those methods. You may be eating food that might be delivering some of those methods to you. I might be, it's like, it's getting me to the point where I'm not quite self-sustainable, but I feel like I should be growing my own food.
Yeah. Do you know what? They've actually brought in this new, not legislation, but so the state of Victoria, that you're not allowed to have chickens. And if you have chickens, you got to have a license for it. And it's going to
surprise me if they tried doing that with community farms, though, like just in your own backyard. It wouldn't surprise me.
They've done that. They've told them that they're only allowed to be open to the public for 1 or 2, 3 days a year. And if you go and look at who they're connected to in this council area, a lot of them are attached to the UN Agenda 21 and stuff like that. So,
because I'm sure you have. I mean, I'm enjoying the conversation, so we can definitely do it again. We just need to spread it out like a few weeks apart.
Yeah, Yeah. Well, when we were talking the other day and you're like, oh, about an interview, I didn't want to, it's not really an interview. I suck in interviews. Right. And it's like, I don't really want to ask questions, but people interest me, right? And I want to speak to those people that interest me. And like what I was saying, when you spoke about the tally sticks, I was like, oh, this is very interesting. This is something, bigger to introduce, right, into this whole narrative. But yeah,
Well,
I definitely.
I'm glad you said that, because I don't look at what I do as being interviews either. I just wasn't sure how we were, like, what the intention was, whether you thought we were doing something on my channel or your channel. And I can definitely invite you on my channel, that's no problem. I just wanted to make sure, like, try to understand what we were doing. But I was getting at something with that. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. It's been a very, very long day for me today.
Yeah. Going back to what I was talking about, that movie was called.
I know what I was gonna say. Sorry, man. Sorry. And I just interrupted you again. It's my, when I say I don't do interviews, but I call them interviews because nobody wants to watch a discussion. Because it seems more appealing, like it seems more important when it's called an interview. But just in a sense like this is just a discussion. Sometimes I might have a few things that I want to ask my guests, but generally it's just like a free flow conversation that I allow people to kind of eavesdrop in, and hopefully they get value from it as well, is the way I look at it. So I'm talking to you, but periodically I'm referencing people because I know other people will be watching this, but this is me and you talking, just having a conversation.
That's it. And that's how the best way to have it. Just see where it goes. But what we were talking about before, that movie was called Lucy, and it's Scarlett Johansson.
And she played in the Avengers movie, which would have been, she played played Black Widow, and that's what that would have been. Yes.
Yep. Okay. And I said Marvel. But yeah, I couldn't.
But she is similar looking to both Charlize, whatever her name is, Charlize Theron, and the chick who played, or the lady, the woman. I shouldn't say chick, and I need to be a little bit. No, I don't. Anyways, the chick who played Harley Quinn. There's a similar look between both.
Margot Robbie.
Of those.
Her name's Margot Robbie. Yeah.
So there's especially Margot Robbie and Scarlett Johansson. There's a lot more similarity.
Listen, Rice, before we wrap it up, I will get you can give yourself a little plug and where we can all find you and your channels. And but I just want to ask one last question. So you are almost a weekly guest now on Around the Blockchain, or more frequently than weekly, twice a week. I don't know, but I often see you on Around the Blockchain. You've been doing that for quite a bit. How did you sort of get into that, or being a part of that show? Because I know that your channel itself is not necessarily just crypto. Like, you've got a variety of things that you talk about. I don't want to use the word conspiracy, but like things on that topic. I know that you did have different parts of your channel, but yeah, how did you get involved in being on Around the Blockchain? Yeah,
all good questions. What I'll say, and let me kind of make this kind of circle back around to the Around the Blockchain thing. So when I first started my channel, I originally called my channel back in January of 2018. It's a little over 5 years now. Originally, it was called Rice Crypto. I was covering crypto economics, politics, talking about what anarchy and voluntarism is. 2020 came around. My channel wasn't really growing a whole lot. And as things started progressing around April of 2020, I decided to add a new element to my channel, March or April, and that was the Stranger Than Fiction stuff. So I broke my channel up into 3 shows. Later that year in 2020, I rebranded to Rice TVx because, again, the channel wasn't limited to just the crypto stuff. Then what happened was, so I had Rice Crypto Show, Rice Report, and Stranger Than Fiction. Stranger Than Fiction is the stuff that you were talking about. That was the stuff that kind of covers fringe topics, conspiracies, law, history, spirituality, and just different things. Now, originally, I wasn't going to have it all on one channel, but I kind of put it out to my community, and they suggested that I keep it on one channel. I should have went with my intuition, which was to not put them all on one channel and keep everything separate, which I've done since. So if you haven't really watched my stuff lately, I've started a new channel. I have Rice TVx, which is just focusing on crypto, economics, and politics. All the other stuff, what was stranger than fiction, I literally deleted more than 1 million views worth of videos off of my channel because I was getting censored and having issues with that show. So I started a new channel called Rice Against the Grain. And that is where I'm moving what was the stranger than fiction content over and separating the content. Now, to circle back around, I said I started my channel in January 2018. If you go and look at Bitboy Crypto's channel, he started his channel around the same time period. So we started around the same time period. I was working with a guy named Ken Bozak, who was kind of an infamous crypto content creator and kind of celebrity. Good friend of mine, like my bro, he's my brother. And he was very respected by a lot of people in the community. So early on in the crypto YouTube space, a lot of us different content creators have been to different conferences, other events, and we've met each other and hung out. I've known Ben Armstrong since 2018. So as his channel grew and he started the Around the Blockchain show originally on his channel, I was invited to be a part of it. And since then, literally, I've been a regular pretty much every week, unless we're doing like a 5-week month or I'm traveling. And sometimes it falls where, depending on how the end of the month works out to the beginning of the month, I may be on the same week, but generally it's just once a week. And I mean, it's a blessing. I mean, it's definitely helped my channel to grow. But I mean, Ben's like a peer of mine. I don't care that I'm thankful that he's got 1.4 million subscribers or wherever he's at right now, but I'm still going to, I don't treat him any differently because of it.
Yeah.
I'm appreciative of him valuing my content enough to want to showcase my against the grain thoughts when it comes to a lot of the things, because as you see with watching some of the Around the Blockchain, I don't always agree with people, and I have a very specific view on things. I just shared just today on my channel on Rice TVx that debate that I did with Crypto Factor about Bitcoin that took place a couple of days ago. I think that you'd watched.
Yeah.
So that right there conversation, when you say that kind of stuff, some people don't even know half of what I just, what I said in there, talking about the inflation bug in Bitcoin and them rolling the blockchain back and how it's technically not immutable and how we could improve the block size on Bitcoin to the point that we wouldn't need these side layer or second layer solutions to get better throughput and faster transactions, more transactions, faster transactions. We could do all that on chain, and it's been proven. So, I will always argue my point of view as much as possible, even with people that I agree with. And that's why, like, I would encourage people, if the XRP portion of this conversation really encourage, if you really liked what I had to say, or you're interested in learning more, go on my channel and search for the interviews that I've done with Ben Armstrong and look for the most recent one. And I ask him about it because he knows how I feel about supporting a banker's coin. He gives his reasoning. I don't agree with it. I still don't, but that doesn't make him less of my friend.
But I do want to say congrats on how far you've gone and everything that you've been doing. I do know it's such a struggle.
Oh, I was going to say, how do I know this though? Is because I have multiple Google accounts. I have like 8 Google accounts, and I'm subscribed to both of my channels with all of my accounts, and I get unsubscribed. And when I ask Team YouTube and YouTube creators on Twitter, they say exactly what you said. We're just eliminating inactive users and like bots and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, but why is it happening at 32.2? Why is it every time I'm hitting over 32.2? Why is it that I have a certain number of people being on? Why is it that one of or two of my accounts that is at least watching videos, at least one video a week, which I would consider to be active, why am I being unsubscribed from my own channel?
Yeah.
Then they don't have an answer for that. They just like when they take a video down and give me a strike and say that I've done something, whether it's medical misinformation, or they've actually said I've encouraged violence and riots. And I'm like, well, where do I say these things? Can you please share with me what I've done wrong so that I can correct myself, please, YouTube overlords. But I can't get any sort of response. I'm really passionate about being censored. It's really hard. It's made my job very difficult. Sorry.
I know what you're saying. That all that started happening to me in 2020 because I started my channel. The first video I made was 2019, but I started my channel in 2020. But I started talking about everything that happened, and then next minute I'm getting strike. The channel was growing, and I'm getting strike. And I'm like, oh God, I have to make a backup channel, and I'm like, I don't want to make a backup channel. And then I kept getting striked so many times that I'm like, and then also too struggled with getting people on to talk about similar things. So I'm like, where do I take my channel? What's the direction I take? How am I going to navigate and make it grow? And it's only been now I'm like, okay, I can't talk about that. I'll talk about this and try and build it that way.
I'll get you on my channel, man, and try to help you get some more subscribers. I'll bring you in for like a content creator spotlight, learn more about what you're doing.
That'd be nice.
I mean, it's people help me out. It's, it's just a matter of like I was telling you before, man, just when you're doing a lot of this stuff by yourself and you're running 2 channels and trying to actually have a little bit of a life too, because that's one thing that the first couple of years of doing this was like, I would let a lot of my personal things get neglected.
Yeah.
And I've had to learn to find a balance too. And I encourage anyone who is a content creator to make sure that they don't consume themselves with the content creation and make sure that they do allow themselves to partake in this thing that we call life, because it's really beautiful. And we need to get outside and get some sun and take our shoes off and touch ground and ground ourselves and connect ourselves and do what's really good for us individually too.
That's it.
But now that we've connected, we'll do this more. I'll definitely give you more of my time. We can definitely do more conversations. I thoroughly enjoyed it. One thing I will say is I really like how all this went, because normally the first thing someone's going to ask in a typical normal, and I know we didn't do everything normal, which is great because I liked it this way, is, hey, can you tell everybody who you are? Because I would like to say that, everything I think I've said is spoken for who I am. And I'm just this guy who puts out videos. I got 2 channels. It's called Rice TVx, Rice Against the Grain. And you can find the information at ricetvx.com. And I'd like to keep it as simple as that, because I wish I didn't have to even say that.
Yeah, well, look, it's like if we spend the first 15 minutes doing something that you've repeated so many times, or things that even people that are steering towards you anyway, they already know this about you, right? And it's like, it's how do you get around that part into the good stuff? But I appreciate
the best
way
to get to know me is just like get to watch my content and let my actions kind of speak for who I am versus me telling you who I am, because I could tell you anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've done some shit that I'm not proud of. I'm nothing that, detrimental. Like I've done some harm to anybody, like as far as like some, unquestionable things. I have no felonies, but I've gotten in a lot of trouble, like driving without a revoked license. A lot of judges have told me I have no respect for the law. Things to that effect. And I, I've done some things that just aren't the best. So I've just been on this path of trying to be a better me 100%. And just being the change that I want to see in the world, and make tons of mistakes in the process, and just try my best to learn from all these things and realize that I'm not more important than anyone else. I don't really try to put myself on any sort of higher level. So me trying to be hard to contact with communication wasn't like, oh, this man is below me, I can't talk to him. It was like just literally just me trying to figure out like the best way to juggle time. And you see how many people I talk to. But now that I'm hearing you having the struggle of trying to find people to talk to, and I'm like overwhelmed with people to talk to, it makes me realize that I should, maybe lend out a helping hand to you, sir.
Well, I definitely appreciate that, and you've made my day. I'm smiling because it does. Well, you know what it's like because you've been there.
Sorry, shit, dude. Sorry.
But I'm glad
I commend you for keeping it going, man. I really do.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad now I've sort of structured like a plan on how I'm going to direct the channel, and moving forward, I think I've got a good setup to help to make it grow now. So I appreciate you, and thanks for letting this you know, make its way to being a success. So
Yeah, again, I thoroughly enjoyed it and look forward to more.
cool, man.